Hello and welcome to another captaincy video from Fantasy Football Scout. Game week 9 was a good week for our key recommendations, with Calvert-Lewin delivering on his promise, even though neither of us ended up captaining him. But especially with Richarlison back and Fulham looking so shaky at the back. Joining me to see if we can get it right ahead of game week 10 is David. David, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. Yeah, as you said, it's a little bit annoying to have not captained Calvert-Lewin after we sung his praises from a number of different areas, both the eye test and some stats as well, which is always fun to do. But I went with Fernandez because I'm a complete coward. I've had a lot of people go, "Oh, why didn't you go Calvert-Lewin?" It's like, I'm sorry, I'm a coward. I went with Fernandez, and I only lost out on about 4 points, I guess, because Fernandez scored 11, Calvert-Lewin got 13. So it's not the end of the world. No. I still think it was a sound decision to go with the crowd. Yeah. That's always going to be a factor that plays in. It may come up again in this captaincy conversation. But yeah, it was nice because a lot of the people we talked about did well, because I said I quite fancied Werner, and he was rather unlucky not to double figure haul, I would say. Ziyech, I think, was the same. I feel like we're on a roll. We can come into this captaincy video, fresh from what I would describe as 3 points from the most recent outing.
Yeah, I got Fernandez in. I was always going to get him in, but I ended up switching the captaincy because it was the Rate My Team computer. He was so far ahead this week. And it wasn't necessarily the ownership, because where I am in the rankings is quite low down. And in fact, Kane and Son were very heavily captained where I am in the rankings. In fact, in the top 10k, which is not where I am, but if I was in that end of the rankings as well, Kane's effective ownership was around 111%. So it shows that we're in a Fantasy Football Scout, a Twitter social media bubble in a way. And while we're all going on about Calvert-Lewin, Fernandez, everyone else is going, I'm just captaining Son or Kane. Something to bear in mind. Let's start with Fernandez again. He's back at the top billing, I think, this time, because he's away. And so what I've got is got a picture of Fernandez up, but more importantly is his track record so far. So obviously he was at home to West Brom. I was a little nervous captaining him at home, because looking at his home scores so far, they're not great. There's a 2, a 6, a 3 and a 2, but he got 11 points. But looking at those away stats, those away points, Brighton away 12 points, Newcastle away 11, Everton away 17. Now we know what happens with Southampton when they're against a good side. They crumble. Their high line is as high as a kite, and but when they're against a team, I was going to say like Wolves, they can keep a clean sheet, although they did end up conceding to Wolves. What do you think, Fernandez away to Southampton?
Yeah, as you say, I think the fact that it's an away match, I think if I was given the choice of, you can only captain Fernandez in one of these two game weeks, either game week 9 home to West Brom or away to Southampton, I think I would have been inclined to go with the Southampton one. As you say, he's always more, it's just bonkers how much better he is away from home from a fantasy angle. I think he always looks the part home and away from a kind of just a normal football angle, but fantasy, it's crazy. He's had 3 double figure hauls away from home this season. That double figure haul against West Brom was his first at home. In that respect, yes, I think he's got good potential. On the whole Southampton high line thing, I think I kind of think that maybe is going away a bit. They are always more inclined to play the higher line at home, as most teams are, really, when you think about what teams want to achieve in home matches. But of course, as you're very right to say that at the start of the season it was ridiculously high, and they got absolutely battered by Spurs. Dare I suggest that they probably learnt their lesson from that, because since then I haven't seen Southampton's defensive line be as high as it was in that game. And interestingly enough, in home matches since then, they've actually been significantly better. So the home match after that, admittedly, the teams aren't as good as Man United, but home against West Brom, 2-0 clean sheet. Game week 6, home against Everton, who are a much better team than West Brom. So a home match there, 2-0 clean sheet again. Then Newcastle clean sheet again. So they actually haven't conceded at home since that Spurs game. So it kind of makes me think something has to give, which either Fernandez is going to ruin their run of defensive form at home, or their defensive form at home is going to ruin his run of form on the road. Looking at the numbers that he's produced this season, you've kind of got to assume that the favour is probably slightly further in his direction because he doesn't really necessarily have to do a tremendous amount to get what you need from him as a captain, which I think the West Brom game highlighted perfectly. I mean, I feel like the very fates of the universe themselves captained Fernandez for that game because it was just absolutely bonkers. But that's just that kind of thing just happens with Man United all the time. So there's that to think about. But of course, the stats as well. In terms of all matches this season, he's top for goal attempts among all Man United players. He's top for chances created. So he plays like the kind of guy you're going to captain. But I do just have this niggling kind of little worry at the back of my mind about Southampton that I think that they are a lot more mature defensively than perhaps like some people give them credit for. I can't see them getting completely pummeled in this game like they did against Spurs, because surely Hasenhüttl's not naive enough to play with that high line again. And then I still think Fernandez is not a bad shout, but to me, I just have this kind of niggling doubt at the back of my mind that it's not going to be necessarily explosive, compared to if they were playing a team that hadn't had this run of form of not conceding goals at home for 3 in a row. So it makes me think solid, but maybe there's better out there. I don't know. I'm probably very against the grain on this one.
I mean, I look at the opposition as well as the home and away, and at home, let's forget home and away for now and just look at the quality of the teams that they have done well against. So they've done well. I say as in haven't been turned over against Palace, against Burnley, against West Brom, against Newcastle. They conceded against Wolves, so they even conceded against Wolves, but they weren't pummeled by them. But they were beaten quite well by Villa. They drew with Chelsea, but nevertheless conceded 3. They obviously conceded 5 against Tottenham. The other aspect is, yes, they did beat Everton, but I look back at that Everton game. Now, Richarlison wasn't fit. Now, going back to last week's show, that's what we were talking about. We were talking about how Calvert-Lewin, Everton, they need Richarlison. He makes them tick. He's just he's a cog in their machine, and they just need him. Also, Luca Dean was sent off, so for around about 20-30 minutes, they were in fact playing against 10 men. So Everton's attack was severely curtailed in that game. I look at that, and then I look at Fernandez's stats. I look at how he is away. I, as a Brighton fan, remember his huge haul against Brighton out of nowhere, and the game had finished. I think everyone had gone, well, if there were fans there, they'd have all gone home. I think Brighton had gone home, and we were just sitting back, and then suddenly he's getting some monster score. That kind of thing I think can happen again. But yeah, looking at these stats, I've got the stats on the screen for all matches. Top, absolutely top. 24 goal attempts out of all Manchester United assets as well. Rashford the next best there. Chances created is double what Rashford's got. So 26 chances created, Rashford's created 13. Big chances total 5. Shots inside the box. I mean, he's the man. If you're going to captain a Manchester United asset, captain Fernandez. If you're going to captain one away, captain Fernandez. And yeah, looking at those fixtures, which is it glass half full or half empty? Is it Southampton half full or half empty? Do we think that it's the opposition is the reason why they've done so well at home, or is it is it because they are in fact much better at home now than we thought they were when they played Spurs? So yeah, that's a decision people are going to make. Fernandez is currently my bus captain, and until I spoke to you, I had absolutely no doubt about that. But like all things, the noise starts here, and we're all going to start second guessing all our decisions. But hopefully,
it wouldn't be an FPL captaincy debate without some
exactly.
I mean, the McCarthy performance against Wolves, I think, is just another thing I just want to chuck in there.
Yeah,
it was epic. It was one of the great goalkeeping performances we've seen this season. To get 8 saves in that game and still come away with 7 points. Even if Southampton concede a heck of a lot of shots, McCarthy is going to be right there making things difficult for Man United based on the quality of saves he made on Monday night. And may even save a penalty if he stays on his line this time. So
yeah, we've seen Southampton. I mean, remember Man City last season came to Southampton and suddenly Southampton turned into Italy from the 90s.
Exactly.
It was incredible.
They are capable of it.
Okay, let's move on. Vardy now. Okay, so there's two school of thoughts with Vardy as well. He can't, only gets penalties. Okay, he gets lots of penalties and he's against Fulham. But, not bad. Not a bad player. Golden Boot winner last season, could be this season as well. The stats I've got up on the screen shows expected goal involvement. This is expected goal involvement, all players for all matches. So this is the season so far. And who is top? It's Vardy. So you cannot take away. I see all these XG, non-penalty, etc., etc. Just why bother? This is fantasy football. It's about getting points. Vardy gets penalties. He scores a lot of them. Therefore, it has to be included. You cannot exclude them. Top of expected goal involvement is Vardy by quite some distance, 8.48. Next is Kane, then Salah, Calvert-Lewin, Bamford and Bruno Fernandez. So this is the company he is topping there. You look at the differences though. Kane, Bruno Fernandes, they're getting those big chances. They're getting those goals, but they're also creating lots of chances. There, Vardy, 6 chances he's created. So he's not your assist man, but he's certainly your goal man. Kane is assists and goals. Salah assists and goals. Fernandes assists and goals. So you can see what you're dealing with there. But yeah, I haven't even spoken about that he's up against Fulham. But
I think that's all you need to say, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like, you just say he's against Fulham, and then instantly all the assumed knowledge
Yeah.
in everyone's head goes, oh, yeah.
all the information we got there about his form, Vardy's form, and then couple in classic, isn't it? Form against the fixture. he's got everything.
Yeah.
So I should be getting him in and captaining him. Really, he looks the best one, doesn't he?
Yeah, certainly on paper, yeah. Because it's Fulham. Whoever's playing
Yeah.
Fulham every week on paper is the best captain candidate. Yeah, it's tricky for me because I've got like a slightly different plan. I've got money, and I don't have Vardy, and I have money in the bank to get Salah back when Liverpool play Fulham. It's funny how Fulham just kind of seem to dictate everything, really. It goes without saying I'd rather have Salah against Fulham than Vardy against Fulham.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily as obvious to everybody else, but yeah, I think. I don't know. I like playing devil's advocate, so I'll do it now.
Yeah.
I think the one thing about Leicester is I still don't know how much I can trust them because I know they didn't score against Liverpool, and I know it's Liverpool. But with everything going on at Liverpool, we kind of assumed that there would be a few moments when Leicester could break away and Vardy would find himself exposing a high line, which Liverpool played because the way they set up their game was they penned Leicester in. Right, and you surely think that Leicester getting penned in, that's exactly what they want.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly how they facilitate the best out of Vardy, but it didn't happen. I just wasn't that impressed with what was happening behind Vardy. Barnes didn't play the whole game. Under still isn't starting. I don't think Maddison has been at his best for quite some time. So in terms of them getting the ball to Vardy, it wasn't quite there yet. Now, obviously, the Fulham game is going to be completely different because Leicester are going to be the team that surely will control possession for that game. Because it's at home, and B, because it's Fulham. Now, it would be very... I don't think it would be that strange to say that when Leicester are in possession of the ball and are asked to break down an opponent, they're not as effective as when they are the ones penned in and can then counter on them. My point here really is how much space is there going to be for Vardy to operate in? There will probably be less than usual. I mean, you only look at what he's done in home matches this year against weaker teams, and the results haven't been as good as away from home. If you compare him home versus away this season, he's had 1.7 shots per game at home versus 2.6 shots per game away from home. So he's always going to be more dangerous away from home. And I'm pretty sure until the Wolves game, he hadn't had a single shot on target at home yet. So the dynamic of Leicester being the home team, being asked to break down a team that's going to sit behind the ball a bit more, is more challenging for them. With it being Fulham, can they actually stand up to a team trying to break them down for very long? Probably not. So maybe it doesn't really matter. But that thought is still just going to be at the back of my mind, that if this game was at Craven Cottage, I would be a lot more happy captaining him than I would for a game at the King Power Stadium. So maybe I'm overthinking it. As you said, we second guess each other all the time when we talk about this, but there is definitely a distinction between Vardy when he's at home versus when he's away. So that's in my mind in terms of whether or not I would sign him and then captain him, bearing in mind that it would be a bit of a diversion to get him in my team.
For me, and this may be the case for other managers as well, it would probably mean getting rid of Kane for Vardy. That would probably be the situation. You're looking at form and fixtures, but then Kane's got the form, and he may have the tough fixtures, and Kane.
And as you said, he's got the assist potential that Vardy just doesn't have.
And if we look at the stats there, I'm not suggesting captaining Kane this week, but I think Kane is an option this week. Certainly for getting points, certainly for getting returns. If Spurs are going to score, Kane's going to be involved, because that's what's happened. Kane or Son they assist or score. Okay. Let's put the whipping boys up. So this is all matches so far. So I haven't done it very latest. I did sort of play around last 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Fulham are not getting drastically better. They're still in the mix of the poor teams. But if we look in terms of big chances conceded, it's West Brom are the worst. They don't seem to get turned over heavily, but they are, season-wise, they're conceding the most, and their XG conceded, their expected goals conceded, are the worst. Fulham in second, 21 big chances, and they're 14. And then, as we mentioned last week, Sheffield United, their defence is leaky, and they're next there. And then Leeds, we know about Leeds, who, with Phillips back, could be a little bit better defensively at the moment. So
definitely.
That's something to look at. See the effect of Phillips there. Also, Arsenal.
We actually have an article on site about that as of Tuesday morning. I'm just going to nip in with the editorial angle. We've got for members can see the full data comparison, games with and without Phillips.
Brilliant.
Non-members, just an eye test, but still useful.
Oh, it's easy. Well, that's easy for people, for viewers and listeners. Go on to Fantasy Football Scout and have a read of that article, because that will explain a bit further about Phillips and Leeds' defence there. But nevertheless, it's showing that how bad Fulham is. I'm thinking, yes, with penalties. I'm thinking with Fulham, they seem to make sloppy mistakes. They tighten up. They sort of. I think we saw it in the last game. The first half was just like, God, Fulham, they're awful. And then the second half was like, oh, okay, I don't know whether they've had a bit of a rollicking at half time. Something has happened, but they got a little bit better. So yeah, as you said, I don't know. You don't know, what sort of Fulham's going to turn up. You can only assume there's going to be mistakes there, and mistakes equal penalties and free kicks, and that's sort of Vardy's territory. So yeah, on paper, good move. There are other choices this week, though. Loads of other choices. And this is where it all starts for those of us that have been having have Man City players in our team for quite a while. Finally, our moment is here, because Man City play Burnley, and that's the start of their good run of fixtures. Now, I don't know whether Burnley necessarily are, well, they're certainly not whipping boys according to the stats. But yeah, what do you think about a Man City asset? I mean, KDB, possibly even Sterling for a differential. They could be intriguing captaincy options. What do you think?
Yeah, well, so De Bruyne is actually my bus captain. He was, when I looked at my team, I thought that's why I'm going with my gut. That, of course, is always subject to change, but that's why I was thinking initially. On the subject of our Burnley whipping boys, no, but they are when they play Man City. I generally find. They're a team that sort of, I feel that there's a little bit of misconception about Burnley sometimes in the wider football community. Like, just no disrespect to anyone who thinks they're a good team, because they are a good team and they defend very well against basically anyone who's outside the big six. Yeah. But actually, when they do play some of the big clubs, especially Chelsea, we've seen Spurs score quite a few goals against them, they can kind of melt in some of these situations because they maybe just don't have the quality or the movement at the back sometimes. So let's look at the matches they've played against Man City. Now, I'm going back as far as the 21st of October 2017, and I'm including FA Cup results in this as well. Their last, I think it's 10 meetings with Man City were 3-0 to Man City, 4-1 to Man City, then a 1-1 draw, 5-0 Man City, 5-0 Man City, 1-0 Man City, 4-1 Man City, 5-0 Man City, 3-0 Man City. So
Right.
Man City
Blimey.
do tend to just put Burnley to the sword.
Yeah.
They don't really care about how many big chances they can see in the last four. They don't care about their XGC. It's just this is a game that Man City typically do well, and it's at the Etihad as well, where most of those better results that I just referenced, most of them came there. So I don't have any qualms from a Burnley angle. Like Burnley aren't going to put me off captaining a Man City player. So then it really just comes down to which of those Man City players do I trust the most. And, anyone who's been paying any attention for the last 2 seasons will know that De Bruyne obviously is the main one that we're going to trust with that, because he's got the best, spread of potential for points. I can't really see Burnley. Man City's defence is getting better and better each week. I know they obviously lost to Spurs, but I think that was a game in isolation, really. Across the board, in these kind of games, they're going to keep clean sheets a lot more than they were before with their new defensive pairing. So De Bruyne is going to get, I would assume, will get that clean sheet point versus maybe a Jesus or Aguero. This is potential. I don't really need to go into too much detail on. The goal threat, I think, is always there as well. I mean, to be honest, if it wasn't for Gabriel Jesus' backside against Spurs, I think he would have scored, because the loose ball popped up to him.
Yes,
he hit it, great shot, looked like it was destined for the goal, but Jesus just got in the way and obviously was offside. So the move came back. There were definitely signs of the De Bruyne that we can trust against Spurs. So in a fixture that they usually are quite rampant in, I'm very happy going for him. Penalty taker as well. Last 4 matches he's top for XGI, expected goal involvement. So that just backs up the claim that he's the most reliable. I mean, like Sterling, I don't know if I can trust him yet, because he's still sort of coming back from a bit of an injury, so he didn't start the last game. He might feature heavily in the Champions League this week, and then if he does, that kind of puts him at risk of not playing the next one. Aguero's back, so I'm not going to own Jesus or Aguero, because we have no idea which of those is going to start. Although, incidentally, the fact that they're both back, I think, makes the whole team better, because those 2 strikers make each other better, and therefore De Bruyne's assist potential gets higher. So basically everything just comes back to De Bruyne. So I'm like I said, it was my gut first call. Like looking at my team, I'm going De Bruyne, and the more and more I look at some of the numbers, the more confident I get that he may stay my captain.
Yeah, I mean, De Bruyne is the one. We've got the stats up for the last 4 matches. He's the one in terms of if you want points. Expected goal involvement, he's the highest. He's expected to be involved in more than 2 goals over the last 4. See there, he's top for goal attempts as well, so he's a midfielder, top for goal attempts, and those chances created are pretty good too. Sterling's quite low down on there, but he's only had 3 starts there and barely featured in the last one. And Sterling does perform better when Aguero is around as well, or indeed when there is a striker around. So I think we should see some upturn in form there. With Aguero, now I seem to remember, did Aguero take a penalty recently whilst De Bruyne was on the pitch? I can't remember. Some people listening or viewing might better point that out, but I think it was in Europe or possibly a cup game. But it's something to look into, and I don't know. De Bruyne is a nice guy. He missed the last one. Will he give that to Aguero? I think Pep sort of tends to leave it to them. So it's possible Aguero might take it. He wants to get back if he's on the pitch. I just think that's a possibility there, but we never know. But just to prepare De Bruyne owners for seeing that, saying, "Oh, good penalty to Man City," and then Aguero steps up, not De Bruyne, so that may happen. But looking at those stats, he's the one. Looking at that at Burnley as well, if you were looking at current form, Burnley are pretty mid-table in terms of big chances conceded. In fact, they're the joint 8th best with Man City themselves over the last 6 in terms of big chances conceded. But as you said, the history over the years, there's something about Burnley, there's something about City at home. It's just going to be absolutely a monster haul for City. It's just who's going to play there. I don't know whether it's through chance or something that's going on in Pep's mind. Sterling very rarely plays at home against Burnley. So I don't know whether that's
anyone rubbish.
I don't know why that has been, but I think if you look back, it may be to do with injuries and those types of things, or it's just a perfect match to rest.
Did he miss the Watford game, the 8-0 last year as well?
Yeah,
I think he sometimes. It does seem quite a familiar narrative, doesn't it? That the easy pick-me-ups for Man City that they have at home, that's when he chooses to rest Sterling because he feels like he can get away with it. I mean, one person we haven't actually touched on is Ferran Torres, who obviously in the data we've got up is second for XGI. He I think a couple of weeks' time we might be looking at him as the more of a go-to guy than Sterling, because he looks so on it, and both club and country. I think he scored a hat-trick, didn't he, in the game against Germany?
Yeah.
He looks really, really exciting. Now, I think the reason people are staying away at the moment is because they fear Pep Roulette, and this is a new guy in the system, so we don't really know. The narrative we just talked about with Sterling. We can say Sterling sometimes misses these easy games. We don't really know what Guardiola likes to do with Torres yet, so that's always going to be at the back of people's minds. But if Sterling doesn't play, because of the reason we just kind of mentioned, then Torres almost is maybe an even better option because of that, because Torres basically plays his position. So it's worth keeping an eye out for him, what he does in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes away with a couple of attacking returns.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so I think this could be. It's going to be one of those weeks, I think, where possibly, as you said, meant Torres, possibly Foden if he starts. One of those sorts of players. Burnley are there for the taking historically against Man City, so it could be one of those players. But I think the smart money, would be on De Bruyne, just in terms of that sheer goal involvement. There are more options, though, this week with Liverpool against my team, Brighton. Brighton, as we discussed last week, are actually statistically pretty good defensively, but if they're presented with quality opposition who fire in a big chances are they will concede. As it transpired last week against Villa, it was a great goal that Villa scored, but overall the Brighton defence looked pretty good, but they do concede. If you're going to be up against quality opposition, you certainly don't want to be up against Liverpool. Salah is going to be back, we think. He is now negative for COVID. Meanwhile, you've got Firmino, who's in good form. Mane is there. And of course, Jota, who we're going to be talking about on the Scoutcast a bit later. But he is in the mix as well. So they've got the stats up on the screen. This is the last 4 matches. It shows that Salah is the man in terms of chances. So assist potential and goal scoring potential. But then, Firmino, bizarrely, his stats are pretty good. 10 shots inside the box. 3 of those on target. His chance creation's really low, but it looks like he's actually behaving like a forward, which is been a bit unusual. But Jota there, I mean, considering he's 6.6, 8 shots inside the box from 6 of those on target from just 3 starts. And he's also created 3 chances. He's expected to be involved in 2 goals over the last 4 as well from just 3 starts. Yeah, I don't know if you're a bit of a maverick, Jota for the captaincy maybe against Brighton. But yeah, these are options that I don't think Salah should be discounted. In fact, he's a player I'm thinking of bringing back in myself this week because I don't like to be without Salah.
It is scary.
What do you think? I mean, especially in the context of the other players we've mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I think first place to start, I think, is with the fixture, because we referenced last week one of the reasons why we thought Grealish would do well in that game is because Brighton typically susceptible on the counter attack. Now there may be some people who watched last week and be like, I didn't see that in that game. Well, that's because Ross Barkley went off injured after 5 minutes, and the drive that he has in midfield is something they hugely lacked for most of that game. So it's annoying for those of us who have Aston Villa players, which I think is most of us now, that we didn't get to see Brighton sort of struggle to deal with the counter in that game as much as we'd hoped. Will they have that problem against Liverpool? Absolutely they will, because Liverpool are basically the best counter-attacking team in the country. And even if they lose the equivalent of their Barkley inside the first 5 minutes, which I guess would be like a Wijnaldum or any of the other central midfield players, they've got another one to just chuck in, because you can just chuck Milner in there. They've always got someone to fill the gap. So this Liverpool team can thrash Brighton. They're very capable of it, because they seem to be the type of team that Brighton would struggle to defend against. Because obviously the stats we mentioned, the stats are decent. That's because they usually have a fair amount of possession. They like to do a lot of attacking. They don't concede shots very often, but when they do, it's usually a big chance. When they do usually concede a big chance, it usually goes in the back of the net, because they can't actually defend those big chances very well, even if they don't come along very often. So they have a high proportion of goals to shot ratio, effectively, which is great for a team that produces loads of shots like Liverpool. In terms of picking out a specific player, it's kind of challenging, I think, because I think Klopp has a tricky. I think he has a tricky decision to make in the next couple of days, because I think he can actually afford to not start Salah, because obviously Salah's missed. Will have missed X amount of time. We don't know how many sessions he's going to have missed. He is negative, but we have seen players test negative and then not play. So a classic example of that was Cody Monday night. He tested negative day or two, couple of days before the game against Southampton, but basically Nuno couldn't play him, because if you've self-isolated because it's not always 2 weeks, because I think when you're the one who's tested positive, you don't have to do 14 days. It's okay, when's 14 days from first symptoms? So some of these guys might self-isolate for 10 days, some might self-isolate for 9 days, some might self-isolate for sometime less than 14, but it's going to be close to that. If you've missed those number of days, it means you haven't trained, and it means that maybe the manager can kind of mentally coach you in terms of tactics for the game. But if you haven't actually trained with your colleagues for that length of time, it does make it harder for the manager to just throw you straight back in. And so then if that manager has an inform option who's now just broken the Liverpool record for scoring in every of his first 4 competitive home matches for Liverpool, he doesn't have to put Salah back in. He could just play the exact same team that he played against Brighton with Jota, who, by the way, played in Salah's position. He could do that and then not put Salah in, but maybe put Salah in for the last 20 minutes just to kind of get his legs going again. That's an option. Or alternatively, Salah, as we know, he loves to play. If he's fit and, he'll be like, no, I want to play. So there's so many different scenarios in my head about I can't predict the Liverpool team for this. So actually, and bearing in mind that I think the 2 best options are basically play the same position almost, or at least have done over the last 2 matches, it makes it really, really hard for me to say, right, I'm going to get that one in and I'm going to captain them. So it's a big dilemma. Bearing in mind that, as you said, context of the other games, I think De Bruyne against Burnley, I think Fernandez in an away match, both of those 2 players are the type of players that would make way for a Salah. Do you really want to sell Fernandez or De Bruyne this week when they've got great fixtures and we're thinking of captaining them, bearing in mind that transfers are precious? Probably not. So I'm probably not going to get Salah this week. So it's tricky, because I think Liverpool can win this game and I think they can do it. They can do it comfortably. But how do I make sure I'm best positioned to take advantage of that for the fantasy points? I'm not sure.
You make a good point about sort of coming back from injury, in this case coming back from a positive COVID test. We don't know. There's uncertainty there. Where there's uncertainty, that's not where you want to put the armband. It's worth noting that on Wednesday, on the 25th of November, you may be watching this after that, but Liverpool play Atlanta. So that's going to give us some clue as to Salah's fitness. He may come on for the last 30 minutes. He may look amazing. He may not come on at all. He may start. We don't know. But that will give us a good indication of the sort of state Salah's in. And we're also going to be picking apart Klopp's comments. I know Neil will be looking at that intently for the team news later in the week to find out whether if Klopp can give any hints really about whether he's starting Salah. Sometimes he'll just say, yeah, of course I'm going to start Salah. But we don't know. Bit of uncertainty. There are a few other options just before we go, just looking at the fixtures there for the armband as well. Now Calvert-Lewin, who we mentioned heavily last week, is still a great option. I think we're not sure. Now you have some stats, Fantasy Football Scout, about Phillips and his role about the Leeds defence. So Calvert-Lewin against Leeds could be a great option. It might not be. So there's an element of doubt there. But then Bamford away is like Fernandez away. He's the guy's a machine. So Everton's defence is so leakier than an old bath. It's ridiculous.
It's weird. I think for this game, I'm with you. I would sooner captain Bamford for this than I'd captain than Calvert-Lewin. Everton's XGC last 4 is 7.12, which is actually the second worst in the whole division. Leeds are in the bottom 7 with 6.05. But yeah, when they have Phillips in the team, it's interesting actually. If anyone wants more info, then like I said, go read the article. But they actually concede more shots when he's there, but the quality and the accuracy of those shots dips. Ooh. So when he's around, they concede fewer big chances. They concede fewer. I mean, the simple way of looking at it is with Phillips in the team, they concede 1.5 goals a game, and when he's not there, they conceded 2.7 per game, which is actually a humongous difference. So Calvert-Lewin obviously is in form, and I guess he can still score, but some people might just look at Leeds and think on paper, oh, I saw them get like whacked like 4-0 a couple of weeks ago. The same will happen again. I don't think it's going to be, the same type of absolute thrashing in this game. Bielsa's not stupid. Like a couple of games where you concede 3 or 4 goals, he'll do something to sort it out. And then when you get your best defensive midfielder come back in, he's got the perfect tool to sort that. So, I won't be captaining Calvert-Lewin this week, even though he obviously did us proud last week. This is what fantasy, Premier League captaincy is all about. You've got to be ruthless. You can't just captain the guy who did well for you last week. You've got to delve in, work out, is he still worth captaining this week? If there's a reason not to, you look elsewhere.
Yeah, if you're contemplating Bamford for the captaincy, it sounds like, or Calvert-Lewin even, it sounds like have a look at that article on Fantasy Football Scout. The only other fixture I've pulled out is Chelsea against Spurs. That's because Spurs, it doesn't seem to matter with the fixture at the moment. I don't know how many they're going to score against Chelsea. Chelsea with Mendy in goal is a completely different beast to when they had Kepa in goal. Chelsea defence I like the look of. But then again, it's Spurs. I'm not thinking of a Chelsea asset. Werner and Ziyech, all, they could have got monster hauls last time out, game week 9, but I don't see it in game week 10. But Son and Kane, I think, we're here chatting away, spending half an hour talking about all the options. Might as well just captain Kane or Son and just go have a holiday for a week. But yeah, what do you think? Just too tough to call, or?
Yeah, I think so. Kane and Son, I guess, because we talked earlier about follow the crowd. In terms of what the crowd is doing at the moment, on the captaincy poll on Fantasy Football Scout, Kane and Son really aren't up there at all. Top of it right now is Vardy, Salah's second, and De Bruyne is third. All on so De Bruyne's on 17%, Salah's on 20%, Vardy on 29%. I'm scrolling for quite some time before I see Son and Kane. So yeah, people aren't really necessarily that interested in going for them this week. Chelsea defence, as you say, is great. Thiago Silva will probably be back for the next game, which I think makes them better. I know he's kind of older and slower, but the organisation that will be there is going to be good. So then, because there's doubt in my mind, then I'm not going to go there. The only thing, I'm with you on the Chelsea assets. The only thing is, Spurs defence has been quite good. Last 4, the XGC is the 4th best in the league, and they've just played Man City, so credit to them. But in that time, attempts conceded from set plays, 19 for Spurs, which is the 3rd worst in the division. So I'm not saying captain Ziyech. I'm not going to say that, but if we're sort of worrying, can the Chelsea assets still find a way to score against Spurs? It does look as if the chink in their armour is the set plays, which of course Ziyech is involved in, not exclusively. Mason Mount is as well. But balls into the box, and of course Spurs obviously lost Alderweireld as well. Chelsea will score in this game, but as you say, picking out who will do it and how confident can I be saying it, very, very difficult to actually do that. So
so it could be a defender goal, could be a Zuma special.
A Zuma 15-pointer will be the absolute classic that you would expect in a crazy season like this.
Okay, just before we go, just mention the members area, all those stats that we've been talking about there from the members area there, lots of good tools to have a look at there, rate my team, etc. If you've enjoyed this video, please remember to press like and also subscribe, that way you can keep up to date with our latest videos and podcasts. But for now, David, thanks so much for joining me, and good luck with your captaincy decision.
Cheers, thanks, and the same to you.